For the past 13 years, Bradley Wolf's world has been silent. Barely 1 year old, Bradley developed cerebral palsy. The prognosis was glum.
They just told me to either love him or put him in a home and forget about him, so we chose to love him.
That love, combined with Bradley's determination, has seen him achieve the unexpected. His disease has meant long hospital stays and daily medical treatment. No one really expected much from Bradley, but he knew he had more to offer. His schooling totals 2 weeks, and yet inside there's an articulate young man who's been yearning to get out. Last year it did. By way of a specially adapted computer, Bradley's been able to talk to the world.
I thought I knew Bradley so well that I never thought that a piece of metal would give me a son's personality, and it has. And just so many, both our worlds are opening up.
When Bradley writes, it's mainly in prose. His words have touched the hearts of many, including former Prime Minister Bob Hawke and Angry Anderson. Bradley's depth of perception and determination has astounded all, including Pam Provost, who offered Bradley an alternative to the conventional medical treatments he simply wasn't responding to. Some 12 months ago, Pam introduced Bradley to an electrical stimulating machine. Developed in Denmark, the machine sends electrical impulses to the muscles, causing them to contract and relax, just as a healthy person's do. It's a form of passive exercise, and Bradley appears to be responding.
His hand relaxed and being able to use the computer better. The left leg was over his shoulder, it's come down and relaxed. Sitting up, saying words. He says he's going to walk, and I believe that he will walk.
Bradley's determination is an inspiration to all he comes in contact with. Mrs. Wolf says the essence of Bradley's message is never give up. When things appear not to be working, look for alternatives. With the help of Angry Anderson, Bradley hopes to spread his message throughout Australia. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
It seems it's gone from the sublime to the ridiculous. Just 6 months ago, this area was doing it tough.
It's probably the worst drought we've ever experienced, and because of that, it's bent us financially.
But consistent rainfall in the last 2 months has given farmers an abundance of pasture and crops. Now the experts are advising that some be stored for the next big drought. It's called silage. The forage is cut, dumped either in a pit or on the ground and sealed by a plastic cover to ferment. Good silage can last for decades. The Department of Agriculture is pleased with inquiries about the fodder storage method. The idea is not new, but in the past farmers have preferred hay to silage. While hay can take up to a week to make in dry, sunny weather, it takes less than 12 hours for silage, avoiding the threat of rain damage.
It's just so much safer. You can get out and predict when you're going to be able to make silage. Get up this morning and say, right, it'll be in the pit this afternoon.
Some local farmers have spent in excess of $60,000 bringing in hay during the drought. Silage may be an alternative for the next big dry.
After 4 months on the drawing board, an agreement concerning Irene Hall Hostel is imminent. There are, however, 1 or 2 technicalities to be ironed out.
The obvious one is that it's a building which has had quite a substantial working life already. We've obviously had to have regard to not being overexposed on major maintenance issues.
The plan is for the university to commercially lease the hostel from the Newcastle Area Health Service. The 3-year lease is worth $250,000 and includes 221 rooms. It'll be managed by the university's International House, with 125 of the rooms going to university students, the remainder to area health staff. The university plans to spend $200,000 upgrading facilities. With this comes a rent hike. Currently, rent ranges from a subsidised yearly rate of $31 a week for health staff to $50 a week for non-staff members. Under the university lease, the yearly rate will be around $65 a week.
We hope that any existing residents who remain will see some value for their increased rent.
Also under the university's jurisdiction is the Old Stitches restaurant. It's to be reopened as a public restaurant. Mr Birch says a major international catering company is interested in operating the public business. The restaurant will also service hostel residents via a range of meal contracts.
Best known for its coal and wine, Cessnock is becoming synonymous with something more disturbing, the home of the highest mortality rate in the region. But a new survey by a Macquarie University researcher reportedly claims that the number of Cessnock people who die young is among the highest in New South Wales. The city comes in at number 9 on a top 10 list of the highest risk areas, with Brewarrina having the worst record for deaths. While possible links between diet and the alarming incidence of heart disease in Cessnock has been focused on in the past, some locals have their own ideas why the death rate is so high in their city.
Well, it's got something to do with them, I don't know, the mines, I don't know.
No, miners, dusted and all bronchial and like heart troubles and everything like that.
Others scoff at the assertion that Cessnock people die young.
My elder sister's 88. And I've turned 81.
The people of Cessnock know all too well that their city's mortality rate is higher than most others in the state. It's been the subject of studies since 1979, including this one by Marie Callaghan, the Mayor of Cessnock. Alderman Callaghan says despite the numerous studies' findings, government support to find out why the mortality rate is high has been non-existent.
Obviously we need major funding. We need government come in for 2 years, a pilot study, a professional officer, a couple of office staff come out, find out what causes the problem and determine what can be done, a strategy to deal with it.
The survey by UK consultants London Economics has predicted a grim outlook for two of Australia's most important industries. Scientists say carbon dioxide emissions need to be cut to slow down the greenhouse effect, which is slowly destroying the Earth's atmosphere. But it's this reduction which could devastate the steel and aluminium industries. The government is committed to a 20% reduction of CO2 emissions by the year 2005. In order to do this, the study says a tax on carbon usage would have to be imposed. This tax would cause steel production and the aluminium smelting industry to collapse.
The aluminium industry in Australia is competing in a world market, and our competitive position is very sensitive to our cost. So any sharp increase in our cost because of a tax on carbon could be quite devastating to this industry.
The implications, though, don't end there. The study says the tax would cut $7 billion from the mining and petroleum sectors, as coal prices would increase by 213%, oil by 74% and gas by 64%. While the effects will be felt Australia-wide, the Hunter region is one area which could significantly bear the cost of repairing the environment. The region survives on coal mining, aluminium and zinc smelting, steel production and power generation, all unfriendly greenhouse industries. According to a recent report by the New South Wales Coal Association, by the year 2004, 9,000 fewer jobs will exist in New South Wales. The majority of those, it says, will be in the Hunter region.
The effect in the Hunter region would be huge. socially and economically devastating.
Mr Goldstiver is one of many industry leaders who believe the economic sacrifice is not worth making.
If you close down the whole of industry in New South Wales, that would make 1/100th of 1% contribution to the greenhouse problem. And that would be achieved at huge social and economic disruption.
Dr Reeves has a master plan for the Australian transport and industrial sector. 2 weeks ago, he put that plan into practice when he drove a Mack truck to victory in the Energy Challenge. In the tank, Diesel, a mixture of 84% diesel, 15% ethanol, 1% emulsifier.
What we demonstrated very clearly in the recent 1992 Energy Challenge was that it is possible to take a standard diesel engine vehicle straight off the assembly line and run it on a mixture of diesel fuel and ethanol to the level of 15% ethanol without any modifications.
In a weight for distance ratio, the ethanol mix outpointed natural gas, petrol and solar vehicles. The ethanol percentage can run as high as 30% in either petrol or diesel engines, creating an obvious saving on oil reserves, but also giving a cleaner mix for the environment.
Ethanol is now becoming accepted worldwide as the most environmentally friendly fuel. In other words, the greenhouse gas impact of production and use of ethanol is practically zero.
But according to the ethanol lobby, this is not just a tonic for the environment and the industrial base, it also has terrific potential for the rural sector. Ethanol, unlike coal, oil and gas, is a renewable product. It can be produced from crops like sugarcane, wheat and corn. It can come from timber in plantations or forests. The timber industry believes hundreds of thousands of tonnes of waste products could be converted to the fuel.
The material that is presently surplus to the management of forests may well be used in a way which there is no immediate prospect of it being used in paper or for hardboard.
Dr Reeves says his ideas represent a dangerous threat to the established fuel sources and says ethanol has received only fleeting interest from politicians. Meanwhile, projects keep going ahead overseas. Engines running on 100% ethanol are being used in Europe. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
On a pitch already slippery due to the continual drizzle, the breakers carried out Bruce Dow's instructions to the letter. Attack, attack. But to no avail as the back of the net took on forbidden ground status. For the first 20 minutes it was all the breakers. Then Jerry Gomez combined with Marshall Soper to give Melita the lead. Pushing forward even more, Ian Heddle latched onto a long drive, but it was a fraction wide, and then Melita was stung into action with shots also wide, and another opportunity went begging as the ball scurried across the face of goal. Heddle again was in the thick of it for the breakers, frustrated at missing a golden chance. 1-0 to Melita at Oranges. Shortly after, the breakers found the back of the net, only to be denied, the referee ruling a foul on the Melita keeper. The visitors nearly gave Newcastle a point as an own goal seemed likely, but good keeping saved the day. Then swinging into attack, Melita nearly went 2 up, but El Ali was clearly offside. Seconds later, El Ali got the chance, beat the breakers keeper Mike Gibson, and in trying to prevent the goal, Gibson fouled El Ali. The referee Sporowski pointed to the spot, Gibson earning an early shower. Greg Brown made no mistake. Final score, Parramatta Melita Eagles 2, BHP Breakers 0.
The haul was so big, police needed a dump truck to transport the load. Operation Robe involved investigators from the Police Air Wing, Dog Squad and officers from the local region. The plants were found in rugged terrain in the Styx River State Forest, 70 kilometres east of Armidale.
The crop ranged from 30 centimetres through to about 5 metres, which is a foot through to about 16 foot high. But the majority of the plants were somewhere between 2 and 3 metres, 7 to 10 feet.
The investigation follows another seizure where 5,000 plants were discovered around Comboyne and West Kempsey on the mid-north coast. A spokesperson from the Police Drug Enforcement Agency says 5 men have been arrested and charged after the week-long operations. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
It seems everyone wants to follow in the footsteps of the good old rugby boys and have a crack at sevens football, where the accent is on attack more than defence, ensuring a visually exciting game while providing the scoreboard attendants with a giant headache as teams rack up big scores. At Maxville today, the first ever sevens tournament conducted by that town, and 16 teams from Grafton in the north to Kempsey in the south took up the challenge. The carrot on the end of a strenuous day's activity, $2,000 to the winner, which should ease the pain of sporting combat. The minor rounds have been split into 4 groups of 4 teams in a round-robin format, with the semi-finals and finals being played tonight. Host team Maxville in blue and white had the better of early results, 18-8 winners over Sawtell, and then turning on the razzle-dazzle to completely bamboozle Marcoo, 54 points to 14.
The weather didn't dampen the resolve of these protesters. They're fighting to save their public hospital. The state government is considering a plan to privatise the hospital at Port Macquarie. Carl Lockwood from the Hospital Action Group is concerned about what this will mean for healthcare in the area. In particular, how it will affect people who don't have private health cover.
Well, all we can do now is wait for the next decision of the council and the government and the hospital board, and then we'll make our decision from there. But we will continue meeting and putting pressure on both parties to make sure that we get the right conditions for the people of this area.
However, the privatisation is likely to be approved by the state government within the next 3 weeks. It's been touted as the make or break issue for the Conservative parties at the next federal election. National leader Tim Fischer tried to sweeten the new charges with promises the GST would actually mean reductions in some areas which already take heavy government slugs. The Labor Party says a 15% surcharge on goods and services is a bill Australians won't accept.
Roller hockey is big business in the Spanish and South American countries as well as Italy, and Australia's effort in qualifying for Barcelona against 23 other nations is quite remarkable. Only 12 teams will compete in Spain, and so far the preparation has been good, but costly.
The guys are putting in, they really are putting the effort in, but it's amateurs, you know, and the cost that they're going through is quite terrific, you know. The individual cost is very high.
And 3 of the team members are from our region. Muswellbrook's Stephen Gregg is a back, Newcastle's Errol Heaney a forward, and Long Jetty Scott Wilson has got the toughest job of the lot, the goal custodian. Understandably, representing your country is a giant buzz.
It's like a dream come true, really. It's one of those things that's evolved, and yeah, it's just a thrill just to be there.
Yeah, really big. As Steve said, it's a dream come true. We've been playing for 14 years, and it's been my goal since I started.
Australia is currently ranked 10th in the world and had to defeat England to clinch a trip to Barcelona. The team is now confident it can lift its global position.
America beat Russia when it was impossible. I'm not saying that we're going to beat any of the top nations, but we'll certainly give them a bit of a scare, and we could be lucky enough to play off for 4th or 5th. But anything above 8th, as Harold said, will be a bonus for us because we're ranked 12th at the moment.
A record 920 swimmers registered for the championship that continues to grow each year, underlining the strength of the sport in northern New South Wales. Today's carnival attracted competitors from Corindai, Gunnedah, Moree, Sawtell, Lismore, Tamworth and along with the local swimmers. And once again the level of competition was extremely high.
I've been starting the events today and I haven't yet had a chance to study the times, but already some of the pool records and club records have been broken, and overall I think the standard will be very high today.
While an Olympic Games is just around the corner, most swimmers are putting their best strokes forward in the hope of gaining some recognition, while others are content to paddle on at their own pace.
Some of them will achieve qualifying times that will enable them to go on to greater heights, as it were, and swim in state carnivals. Some will even swim interstate after this event today. Many of them are seeking, of course, just the honour and glory for their own clubs. Some are seeking to swim personal bests. There's really a lot of reasons that swimmers are here. Some will go on, and some will be just happy to have swum.
Arguably the fastest sailing craft in the world, the 18-footers were in Coffs Harbour as part of a statewide promotion, and for a long stretch this morning a lack of wind held up racing. And when the skiffs finally got underway, there wasn't the breathtaking speed that they are renowned for. Nevertheless, exciting racing prevailed, with IOOF able to pick itself up from a stint in the drink to fly home and grab third. But the two glamour craft battled out the top placings, with Winfield Racing just shading AAMI to take the title.
There were more than 1,600 participants of all shapes and sizes in Armidale over the weekend for the dog show, which was reduced to just one day because of the wet conditions. The event attracted international judges from India and Canada who looked at the dog's appearance, condition and level of obedience. The standard of competition was high, with most dogs putting on a fine performance. There were exceptions, however, with some just wanting to play and others determined to stay dry. Organisers were pleased with the weekend's competition, but next year they're hoping for
warm, sunny conditions and we've got to organise some judges yet, but we'll see. We've really done well out of this one, so we'll try again.
Colin Burgess had taken advantage of a break in the rain to move some wood near his barbecue, but he disturbed a male funnel web spider sheltering from the rain.
Got something on my finger and I moved really quick, had a look down and it was a funnel web spider.
Although Mr. Burgess felt fine, he was unsure whether the spider had bitten him. An ambulance was called and a compression bandage strapped to his arm to stop any venom moving through his body. Ambulance officers say there were puncture marks on Mr. Burgess's finger and venom was found on his skin. But Mr. Burgess acted swiftly in shaking the spider off his hand, preventing serious poisoning. At the insistence of ambulance officers, Mr. Burgess was taken to Gosford Hospital for observation. He was released a short time later.
I hope that every organisation will use these facilities to their fullest advantage. It makes you wonder what can be achieved in such a small town when the community gets behind something as challenging as this building.
I would like to say thank you for allowing us to be part of our new community hall.
Today's talks included industry chiefs, union leaders and business groups. According to the Minister, the talks should mean the hunters' interests will be considered in the coming National Economic Statement.
Getting information first-hand from the people who are actually going to make the decisions about whether to invest or not certainly puts things more clearly in your mind than if you're getting it through the filter of various other people and finally coming to you from people who are totally divorced from the decision-making process.
It's just over 2 weeks until the release of the economic statement, but according to Mr Willis, no decisions have yet been made.
We haven't made any decisions at this stage. We've had some discussions and lots of work has been commissioned, but we haven't put the statement together. Now that process is going to get underway really from this afternoon.
While hesitant to give anything away, Mr Willis did give some hints. Tariff reductions and the elimination of protection will continue, but the government is likely to review company tax and Australia's depreciation regime. Workplace restructuring will definitely remain.
But there is apparently some concern in the hunter workforce, in some areas of it particularly, about restructuring being job destroying. Well, I think the message for those people has got to be if there isn't restructuring, then the jobs will go.
For the state opposition, the phone has become the preferred means to get in touch with what people don't like about the Greiner government's policies. Last week, the opposition set up a rail hotline in Sydney and the Illawarra, taking 1,500 calls from people criticising the recent changes to train timetables. From tomorrow, it's the hunters' turn to voice its concerns, and opposition leader Bob Carr expects the phones will be rung off the hook.
I'd like to think that it was better, but I suspect we're going to get the same level of complaints. Now, the hotline worked very well where we tried it in other regions, and I suspect that it's going to be a very good mechanism for getting feedback here.
Mr Carr says the calls will be used to help formulate a policy more people and regionally based than the Greiner government's.
Well, we've got to have a policy based on the needs of the region because the needs are very different, region from region, and that's something I think that the SRA has overlooked.
But commuters at Newcastle rail station today could think of few complaints for the hotline.
Not really, no. We're quite happy with the service from Dungog down.
Yeah, I've got no complaints with it so far. It runs when I want to go.
The hotline will be open for 4 days and will operate through the same telephone numbers as the Hunters' 5 state Labor parliamentarians.
Merewether led by former Olympian Eve Wiltshire with Bertha Doherty, Elaine Pinkston and Bessie Lowes, and the Wall's End squad, Olive Weller, Mari Green, Hilda Smith and Lillian Bowditch. It was always going to be tight, Merewether with the purple markings probably slight favourite, but the Wall's End women made the early running. After 13 ends, they led 18-10, and after 15, it was 19-13. Then Merewether turned it round. They threw long ends and threw Wall's End off its game, and from there, it was all one-way traffic. The final score, 28-20. The Merewether crew pocketed $360 for its 3-hour effort.
Norm Steep from the Newcastle Master Builders Association says he hopes the amalgamation will wipe away the demarcation problems that have dissected the industry in the past, but he's fearful the super union will drag the building industry into issues affecting only mining.
We get involved in all sorts of other problems outside of the building industry in general that could cause problems, and I just wonder if a union of that size now has the management capabilities to administer it in a responsible way. That will be great.
But Bob Cochrane of the Builders Workers Industrial Union disagrees. He says the union now has the strength to tackle any issue.
The mining industry, for example, will campaign around issues that involve only miners, likewise the building industry. The time when we will come together, as I've just said, is on issues where we're all united, we have a common enemy.
The new CFMEU takes in the Builders Workers Industrial Union, the Australian Timber and Allied Industries Union, the United Mineworkers Federation and the Operative Plasterers and Plasterworkers Federation. In April, members of the Federated Engine Drivers and Firemen's Association will also vote on whether to amalgamate. The CFMEU believes its membership has the potential to expand to more than 300,000. In the Hunter alone, that could grow to more than 12,000.
We will be in a far better position financially, industrially and politically to deal with some of these major issues for our members.
The future of the lumberyard site has been debated in Council for several years. Last year, Council received a $20,000 grant from State Government for work on the Station Master's cottage. City Council has now decided to match this and on March 1st will begin weatherproofing the cottage to protect it from further deterioration. The Council's Built Environment Committee yesterday appointed Sydney-based archaeological consultants to conduct a conservation plan of the site. At the same time, the consultants will formulate a conservation plan for the Frederick Ash building on the civic site. Both conservation plans will cost Council almost $40,000. The consultants will begin assessing the sites within weeks, taking a minimum of 3 months to complete. Newcastle City Council will use the plans to decide on further development of both sites. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
We're mainly battlers, we're all old age pensioners there, and I live on my pension.
It's these sanitary pan-style dunnies that have prompted about a dozen Farley residents to take on Maitland City Council. This year's charges for collection of the pans have skyrocketed more than 100%, and the battlers reckon that stinks.
Extreme resentment, and that I couldn't believe that such an attempted extortion could come from a council.
The battlers, including 91-year-old Dolly Hodgins, say they simply can't stretch their pensions far enough to pay their rates. Does it make you think twice before you go to the toilet now?
Yes, it does.
While the people in Farley are paying more than $800 to have their pans collected, those in Cessnock are charged $347. Lake Macquarie City Council has a fee of $420, while those in Dungog pay just $176. The Mayor of Maitland, Alderman Graham Dunkley, says he knows the higher charge is hurting the pensioners, but other ratepayers have been subsidising the service.
But the actual cost to the ratepayers of Maitland is $1,470 per service, because we have to have a full specialist crew and all the equipment and collection gear that goes with it. And we have less than 70 services.
The Farley battlers are now taking their fight to the Minister for Local Government, Jerry Peacock. Scott Bevan, NBN News.